Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to completely unpack a seriously fascinating piece of biblical history and prophetic literature today. We're taking this huge, expansive look at Ezekiel chapter 37. Focusing specifically on that really famous vision of the Valley of Dry Bones and the super profound concept of the two sticks becoming one. Now, if you grew up around this text, you might instantly think of that old spiritual song, right? The toe bone connected to the foot bone, and you just kind of assume you know the whole story. But listen, the source material we're exploring today, it reveals a thousands of years old mystery regarding the prophetic restoration of Israel that goes way, way deeper than it first appears.
So, to start us off, we really have to unravel a compelling mystery. Who exactly are these dry bones? The text opens up with the prophet Ezekiel standing in this totally desolate valley where hope has, quite literally, dried into dust. Just picture the absolute bleakness of it for a second. Bones are scattered everywhere across the desert floor, totally bleached by the sun. They're like silent witnesses to a people who once lived and carried the covenant fire. Now, Ezekiel is standing right there among Judah's exiles in Babylon, and he's feeling the intense weight of their specific captivity. But as our source analysis reveals, the message he gets in this moment stretches far, far beyond just those southern tribes of Judah.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to journey through the Valley of Dry Bones, examine a family torn in two, uncover ancient prophecies of return, decode the two sticks becoming one, and finally look at the one new man. We're tracing this mystery all the way to its new covenant fulfillment. Section 1. The Valley of Dry Bones, a hope dried to dust. Imagine the incredibly somber reality of this scene. Ezekiel, a prophet in exile, is standing among a displaced, grieving people. They've lost their temple, their land, and seemingly their entire future. I mean, it really feels like the absolute end. But God gives Ezekiel a specific identification for these bones that completely, totally reframes the entire vision. So the crucial point is right here, and it hinges on Adonai's exact phrasing. He tells Ezekiel, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Can you imagine the shock value that statement would have carried for Ezekiel? Think about it. He's a priest of Judah, standing among the exiles of Judah. But God is not just speaking of Judah alone here. He's speaking of an entire family, a nation tragically torn in 2 centuries earlier. This isn't just about the Jews and Babylon going home. No way. This is about a much larger, historic fracture that God is promising to miraculously heal. Which brings us to Section 2, a family torn in two, the division of a nation. To understand why these bones are dry and why it matters so much that they represent the whole house, we really have to look back at the historical background. We need to see exactly how this family fracture happened in the first place. Okay, originally there was a united monarchy under David and Solomon, right? But since the days of Rehoboam, the kingdom split into a bitterly divided nation. You had Judah down in the south, but then you had this massive northern kingdom known biblically as Ephraim. The critical, totally devastating fracture happened during the Assyrian conquest. And guys, this wasn't just some political defeat. It was an absolute catastrophe. The Assyrian Empire's strategy was to completely obliterate a conquered people's national identity. So the northern kingdom of Ephraim was violently carried away and scattered like seed across the nations. They just disappeared completely into the Gentile world. And it's this deep trauma that sets up the final, ultimate phase on our timeline here, the prophesied reunification. And this brilliantly illustrates a profound and lasting dynamic. On one hand, you had Judah. Scripturally, they're referred to as the near. Even in exile, they remained identifiable. They painstakingly preserved the Torah, their language, and their royal lineage. But on the other side, we have Ephraim, the house of Israel, referred to as the far off. Because they were so thoroughly scattered among the nations by the Assyrians, they married into foreign peoples, adopted foreign customs, and over generations, they suffered the ultimate tragedy. They completely lost their identity. I mean, they became so assimilated that they no longer even knew their own name. They were living entirely as Gentiles. Let's move to Section 3, the prophecy of return, divine strategy. You see, this devastating scattering, as incredibly hopeless as it seemed, well, it actually wasn't the end of the story. Ancient writers and prophets foresaw a divine strategy quietly at work, promising that this lost identity would one day be miraculously recovered, and the family would be reunited. Just listen to the sheer heartbreak in the prophet Hosea's voice. He voices the absolute tragedy of the northern kingdom scattering, declaring that God says, "I will have no pity, lo ru shema, and you are not my people, lo ami." But in the exact same breath, he promises they will again be called children of the living God. As the source article points out, Hosea isn't talking about Judah here. He's talking about the house of Israel, sown so deeply among the nations that they looked exactly like Gentiles. It's actually incredibly similar to the story of Joseph in Egypt. Remember how Joseph looked, dressed, and spoke so much like an Egyptian that he was totally unrecognizable to his own flesh and blood brothers? That is exactly what happened to the scattered tribes. What's really amazing is the absolute consensus on this throughout ancient texts. Isaiah spoke of peace to him who is far off and to him who is near. Daniel prayed for all Israel, both near and far. The sages in the Sanhedrin taught that the lost 10 tribes will eventually return. And it is so vital to note that ancient rabbinic heavyweights, like Rashi, alongside the Targum paraphrases, they firmly affirmed that Ezekiel's dry bones represent all Israel, including those scattered tribes who appeared to be lost to the Gentile world forever. These scholars hold immense weight. This isn't some fringe modern theory, This was the mainstream ancient Jewish hope. They all knew these deeply scattered people still absolutely belonged to Israel's story. Section 4. 2 sticks becoming one. Healing the fracture. So, how exactly does God plan on healing a fracture that has literally erased a people's identity? Well, Ezekiel is given an incredibly powerful, tangible visual metaphor to reveal this divine plan for reunification. The 2 sticks is a prophetic object lesson. God commands Ezekiel to take one literal stick bearing the name of Judah and another stick bearing the name of Joseph, which represents Ephraim, the northern kingdom. He is told to join them into a single stick in his hand. Just imagine the visceral, physical act of Ezekiel taking 2 separate, rigid pieces of wood and forcing them together in his fist until they miraculously fuse. It's a staggering piece of prophetic theater. It signifies the permanent healing of the fracture, the divided kingdom becoming one united nation again under the ultimate son of David. Let's move to and see how this builds directly into the apostolic worldview found in the Newer Covenant. According to the source analysis, the apostles understood that the scattering wasn't abandonment at all. Actually, it was a divine long-term strategy. Step 1, dispersion. The seed of Israel was planted among the nations. Step 2, gathering. And here is the beautiful paradox. Because they were scattered among the Gentiles, the nations themselves could now be drawn into the covenant when God called Ephraim back. And finally, step 3, restoration. The entire family is healed. Arriving at section 5, the one new man, the reconciled family. This is the triumphant culmination of our timeline. It bridges these ancient Old Testament prophecies directly to the New Covenant writings. Consider how Paul writes to the Ephesians. He says, "He came and proclaimed shalom to you who were far off and to those who were near." Keep in mind, Paul was a highly educated Pharisee. He knew the prophecies of the near and far off inside and out. He is quoting Isaiah here with absolute prophetic precision. By using the terms far off and near, he is speaking the exact language of the prophets. The dividing wall falls not to erase Israel, but to heal it, bringing both the near Judah and the far off scattered tribes, who are now living as Gentiles, into the fully restored family. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this framework completely revolutionizes how we understand the one new man from Ephesians. The restored flock includes Judah, scattered Ephraim, and the Gentiles joining Israel's God. This source analysis points out that Paul's one new man isn't some brand new third identity that somehow replaces Israel. Rather, it's exactly what we've been talking about. It's the resurrected house of Israel, Judah and Ephraim, finally reunited, with the Gentile nations grafted in alongside them. It's Jew and Gentile restored to covenant unity. The Gentiles aren't replacing the family. They are literally being invited to join the reunited house. We even see this directly in the words of Yeshua, Jesus, in the Gospel of John. He says, "I have other sheep that are not from this pen. I need to bring them in." When Yeshua said, "I have other sheep," who do you think his first-century audience thought he was talking about? His stated mission to the lost sheep of the house of Israel echoes this exact prophetic hope. He's gathering the scattered northern tribes alongside the nations into one flock under one shepherd, just exactly like Ezekiel 37 promised all those centuries ago. Which leaves us with this final, sweeping question. Was the devastating scattering of the northern kingdom actually the divine means by which God would breathe life into the whole world? Think about that for a second. It completely reframes Ezekiel's Valley of Dry Bones. It's not just about a return from Babylon. It's a massive, sweeping promise of global national resurrection, reaching the entire world through a restored, reunified family. Just let that sink in. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive explainer. The core takeaway here is that the ancient prophecies of the divided kingdom are intricately, beautifully woven into the new covenant promise of reconciliation. If this thousands of years old mystery fascinated you as much as it did me, you absolutely need to read the full, in-depth analysis of Ezekiel 37 and the two sticks. It was authored by Lisa Basinger on the Our Ancient Paths website. You can find the direct link to the original article right below in the description. Seriously, go check it out, keep learning, and I will see you in the next explainer.